being shared? Are you able to see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you very much, and I think we'll start our session. So this is the it's a seminar on sustainable sanitation in a changing world. And so we have three facilitators, Dr. Kabika, Engineer Pride, and myself, Engineer Kameya. So we'll start with part one, which is the introduction to the sustainable sanitation principles and the rationale. I think I've already talked about who we are. So I think to begin with, I think probably a lot of you are wondering what is sanitation, and also specifically what is sustainable sanitation. So I think maybe just to kickstart, I would like to just hear from one uh, member or participant what they think sanitation is. Yeah. Anyone with a take what they think sanitation is?
Good morning, everyone. My name is
Morning.
Emanuela Lima. I
Yeah.
think sanitation things is more abrangent. You can explain it in 4 days, because in sanitation things we have two lines, big lines for the process for treatment. We have anaerobic treatment and aerobic treatment. When I think in sanitation, we think and collect wastewater, direction this water and proper place for the improve this process happen in a natural process like degradation by degradation for the material, carbonate material, and another component. So we know we require with this water and concentrate place for the accelerate this process for happen in natural process. And mitigation like eutrophisis, I don't know if it's correct, but eutrophização e outros, and other things like this.
Good. Thank you for your submission. Yeah. So I think when we're talking about sanitation, I think like you've rightly put, by definition, sanitation is an act or process of making sanitary. So this is an aspect where we are looking at the promotion of hygiene and the prevention of diseases by ensuring that we maintain a sanitary conditions. So to maintain a sanitary condition where there's human habitation, you have to ensure that, sorry, uh, could you kindly mute your mic, please? Yeah, so to maintain a sanitary conditions where there's human habitation, you have to make sure that all waste that is generated in that particular area is removed. Includes waste such as sewage and trash, to make sure that the environment doesn't provide conditions where diseases prevail. Also, I think one other aspect of sanitation, or basically to ensure that a sanitary environment is maintained, there's now what we call sanitation systems. So how do we ensure a sanitary environment is maintained? Is that we have to have a combination of things that need to work together to make sure that happens. This encompasses aspects to do with having institutions that are going to regulate and ensure that the waste is removed. This is also encompassing aspects to do with how the capture and the removal of this waste is actually organized and managed. It also has to make sure that this is fit for purpose. It takes into consideration the users. It also would require that there is a set of technical infrastructure or technical infrastructure that will enable that this waste is adequately captured and removed. And also, to summarize this all, we are looking at that their waste will have to be collected, it will have to be transported, it will have to be treated, and also whatever treatment products that come out from there, they have to be managed in order that they do not end up creating post-treatment pollution. So we are looking at different aspects of this waste. There is waste that is human excreta. There is waste which is wastewater. I think we'll talk about the differences of this kind of waste. This also encompasses waste such as solid waste. It also encompasses waste such as stormwater that is arising from any precipitation that happens in an inhabited area. And so, coming to our topic, to the title of our seminar this week, which is sustainable sanitation. So for this system to be a sustainable sanitation system, it must not only just promote or protect human health by making sure the trash or the waste is removed, but it has to make sure that it leaves a clean environment. It has to make sure that it breaks the cycle of diseases, and it has to do this in an economically viable, in a socially acceptable, and in a technical and institutionally appropriate, while ensuring that the environment that humans have habited remains in its as natural a state as possible, and making sure that it does not deplete the natural resource base. So meaning when we abstract resources from the environment, we have to replenish it. That's what we mean by making sure that we have a natural resource base. We should not deplete the resources that we use. And so, from the global perspective, what has happened, or what has happened in terms of sanitation? What is the conversation that is happening at global level? So I think we start from what we are calling the Millennium Development Goals, which were targets that were set to be achieved at the end of 2015. And so these Millennium Development Goals had several goals spanning different sectors, including water and sanitation. And so when it comes to sanitation, or sustainable sanitation in particular, the focus of the MDGs was basically to increase access to what we called OSS, which is on-site sanitation technologies. And so the MDGs were mostly encouraging actors, encouraging countries to be able to reduce the number of people that were using unsanitary means to manage their waste. And so that was the purpose. Have people construct proper toilets at their premises. And so that is all that it focused on. So it however, neglected the consequences of this goal. In that, for instance, when everyone constructs toilets, there's a waste that will accumulate where they are based or they are habited, and this waste will have to be managed. It will have to be taken away at some point. It will have to be treated so that it does not contaminate the environment. And so at the end of 2015 and beginning 2016, there were the new goals were set, and these were the sustainable development goals. I think probably most of us are aware about these goals. They span across different aspect, different discipline, different sectors. And so specifically for sanitation, the focus were now to accelerate the access to a sanitary environment for the majority of the population. And so it focused on what we call the entire service chain, which meant that you are not just looking at people having toilets, but you're also looking at how this waste is managed. And so the specific goals that were developed for sanitation, they fall under strategic goal 6, which is to provide clean water and sanitation. And so under this, the aim is that by 2030, we should achieve what is called safely managed, meaning that the waste that we generate has to be self-collected, it has to be removed, it has to be treated, and it has to replenish the environment where we've dragged it, we've gotten it from. And so there are several definitions of sanitation. I think the one we talked about is just one of them. So in some contexts or in some regions, you have sanitation being defined as a means of collecting and disposing of excreta and liquid waste in a hygienic way, so as not to endanger the health of individuals or the community as a whole. But the rationale of why we need a sanitation or a sanitary environment is like we are primarily trying to have a collection of actions that are aimed to reduce the spread of pathogens, or basically to maintain a healthy living environment. So like I mentioned, solid waste is generated where people are habited. We have to collect it, we have to remove it from that environment so that it does not spread pathogens. And so there are several aspects of sanitation, and it includes wastewater treatment, it includes solid waste management, it also includes stormwater management. From the human rights perspective, to have sanitation means that you are focusing on ensuring that everyone has access to and can use access to and the use of excreta or wastewater facilities and services that ensure privacy and dignity and ensure that there's a clean and healthy living environment for all. So that's the goal. The global goal is that everyone should have access to a facility. They should be able to have access to this facility with a sense of privacy, with a sense of dignity, and also that everyone should have a healthy living environment. And so sustainable sanitation has four main aspects. We are talking about that when accessing sanitation, it has to be safe. We have to do it has to be safe sanitation. We also have to ensure that we provide it has to be physically accessible to all different kinds of people with disabilities, people who are differently abled. It has to be affordable to all, meaning it's not just about the rich, it's also about thinking about those people that are low income, finding difficulty to make it month into month, and those that has to be done in a culturally sensitive and acceptable manner. We understand that different cultures have different norms and different taboos, and so when you're talking about ensuring sanitation, this has to be done in a manner that is acceptable to that group of people. So what does it mean specifically in terms of specifics? When we're talking about safe, here we're talking about that the sanitation must effectively prevent human, animal, and insect contact with excreta. When we're talking about physically accessible, we mean that toilets must be within or in the immediate vicinity of each household, educational institutions, workplace, and it should be available for use at all times of the day or night. And also, you should have access to associated services such as the removal of this wastewater or sewage or latrine. Um, when we talk about cultural sensitivity, here we're talking about that the aspects of the construction and the design of the latrine should be culturally acceptable or appropriate. Meaning, for example, in certain cultures, particularly in Africa specifically, you have situations where males and females have to use separate sanitation facilities because there's an aspect of privacy, there's cultural aspects of dignity, and also around the safety of the users. When we're talking about affordability, here you're talking about the access to sanitation, including maintenance, must be affordable. Meaning we need to reduce either the cost of constructing the facility, the cost of the services, and make sure that for people to access sanitation, they don't have
Sorry,
to
Engineer
pay.
Kameya.
Yes?
Engineer Kameya, sorry, the slides are not moving. I don't know if
Ah.
it's only me.
Could you confirm, are the slides not moving from the end as well? From everyone else?
Yes,
They're
they've not
not.
been moving at all. Now, yes,
They're
they
not
are.
moving.
They are moving.
Okay. Okay, let me try to share the window maybe.
And the presentation is in the other mode, not the presentation mode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. How about now?
Yeah, they are moving now.
They are moving now? All right. Apologies for that. Yeah, okay, so I was mentioning that when talking about sanitation, we are talking about safety, physically accessible, cultural sensitive, and affordability. And I was mentioning that for affordability, we are saying that when people access sanitation facilities, this should not be done at the expense of other essential goods and services such as food, education, and health. Yeah, and so why is sanitation important? So when you look at the impact of sanitation or the benefits of having appropriate sanitation, it spans across three main aspects. You've got benefits that accrue to the society, you have benefits that accrue to the environment, you have benefits that accrue to the economy. And so some of the benefits for the society is that I think I mentioned aspects of privacy and dignity, the safety for the society, the prevention of disease or the promotion of health. You're talking about nutrition when people when people do not experience access to good, it means that they can still maintain a healthy status. And also there's aspects of equality, meaning you're looking at providing equal access to everyone, despite of their economical status, despite of their any other specific affiliation. When we talk about the environment here, we're talking about aspects of aesthetics. So, for example, when waste is not collected, such as solid waste, in most cases would degrade the environment. The environment will not look as appealing. It might also impact on certain critical aspects, such as drainages when solid waste clogs it. You got benefits such as environmental health, where the prevalence of diseases or the prevalence of pathogens in the natural environment gets to be curtailed. You got some benefits on the economy, such as when you have a sanitary environment, it's a good catalyst for tourism, for example. It also has cruise benefits in terms of reduced health cost, as less people are going to end up having diseases such as diarrhea, dysentery, that are going to actually have a economical burden in terms of health cost. You got benefits such as when people are less sick, they become more productive and they contribute to the economical development of the country. And then we have some synergies in these three benefits, such as the protection of resources. So when you maintain a sanitary environment, it means your sources of water remain safe for use by the society. They remain safe to promote the aquatic environment. They also remain ideal, or they will be ideal for use in different economical activities, maybe in different industries of production. It also eventually, from the host perspective, is that you end up having reduced child mortality because of the reduction of the prevalence of certain diseases. I think the most common one, which has been around in most developing countries, is aspects of cholera, dysentery, and typhoid, which usually would affect children the most. And so sanitation really is the backbone to ensure that the natural environment can remain safe for human habitation and support the various economical and other uses, such as the biodiversity that exists in these waters. And so we have different types of systems. For example, especially in developed countries, we end up having some highly sophisticated sanitation systems. For example, I'm showing an example of a Swiss sanitation system. So this is where they have 97% of their population connected to the sewer in this particular city. They have very large wastewater treatment plants. So, of course, they have the water, they have the money to run this system, they have the technical know-how, the experienced staff, there's efficiency in terms of administration, there is energy and resource management. But such systems work very effectively, yes, but they are very expensive to set up, they're very expensive to operate, and so we rarely see such kind of level of sanitation across the globe. In the end, we end up seeing a different mix of systems, which in most part, it largely affects developing countries, including the majority of Asia and Africa. As you can see from the global outlook, the majority of Africa or sub-Saharan Africa has very basic access, or the proportion of people that are using or that have access to a sanitary environment, meaning waste is adequately collected, removed from the habitation, treated and recycled. It's quite low compared to most of it's quite low compared to most of the developed countries. As you can see from that global outlook, you see that in most of Europe, North America, they have between 91 to 100% of their population having access to at least a basic sanitation.
Together, online student
service. Okay, so now since the MDGs and SDGs, the other question that you might ask to say, are we making progress as a globe in terms of ensuring that people have access to a sustainable sanitation service. And so what I'm showing here is just the comparison between 2015 and 2020. As you can see from the graph there, we have a different picture between the rural and the urban context. So globally, when you look at the rural and the urban, or when you look at the rural aspect, you see that there is a marginal improvement in terms of access to a safely managed sanitation, meaning that waste is actually collected and treated and safely disposed, as compared to the urban. The urban has been much more in a better state, but also you can see there that the increase is very gradual, and at least the majority, or slightly less than the majority of the urban population still only have access to a very basic sanitation service. There is still a good proportion of people that are still practicing open defecation, and this is quite more pronounced in rural areas, which in most cases they are vast pieces of land. There's very little economic activities. There's very little focus even from the global perspective. And so now looking into the sustainable sanitation concept, which are going to be the focus of this seminar. So when you're talking about the global sanitation concept, we have several tenets of this concept, which we'll discuss this week. And the first one is that when you talk about sanitation, you cannot talk about sanitation in isolation. It is heavily linked to hygiene, water, drainage, and solid waste. So if any of these are not well planned, they are not well managed, it heavily impacts on the likelihood of maintaining a sanitary environment. So if you have contaminated drinking water, it's difficult to maintain a sanitary environment, or if you have poor sanitary environment, it ends up affecting your availability of fresh and clean drinking water. If you have poor sanitary environment or you have poor hygiene, it's very difficult to have an environment that prevents the transmission or the prevalence of pathogens and diseases. If your solid waste is not collected, it also is an avenue for pathogens to thrive in such conditions. And so the other aspect is that also the aspects of drainage, when you have stormwater that remains stagnant in the habitat environment, it prevents, it makes it difficult to maintain a sanitary environment, in that your water, your sources of water end up being contaminated, your toilets end up being flooded, your solid waste end up being contaminated with stormwater, and making it quite difficult to maintain a sanitary environment. And also the other aspects of this concept is that when we're talking about the products of this of sanitation, which is wastewater, is that this wastewater, in most cases, it's a mixture of different streams of waste, which can be managed separately. So for instance, you have urine, you have feces, you have solid waste. So all of these are streams of waste that can be managed separately, and I think we'll discuss a bit more on that. And also, this wastewater contains quite useful resources in terms of water, nutrients, and it actually have energy content in it. And so there's a good avenue that you can recycle or reuse the useful material that is contained in this wastewater. The management of this wastewater is also can be done using different avenues. There's it can be centralized at the city level, it can be decentralized, and there are examples for the examples of these different avenues that have worked at scale. And so to also that the other part of this concept is that to have a proper sanitation system, a sustainable sanitation system, you will need a combination of technologies to make this work. You need to have toilets that capture the waste, a means of emptying, a means of removing this waste, transporting it, and a means of treating. And also another aspect of this concept is that you have to think about how you plan for these systems, and it has to be done in a demand responsive manner where there's an active participation of people. It has to be people centered. It has to take into consideration the different activities that are happening in a particular city or area. There's a section which I've included this week to talk about sanitation planning, and we'll be discussing that in the course of the week. And so the first part of this sanitation concept is the aspect of the fact that sanitation is linked to hygiene, water, drainage, and solid waste. And so what does this concept actually entails? It means that in the context of maintaining a sanitary environment, we have to recognize the fact that we have these aspects that are so much intertwined, this being water supply, solid waste management, stormwater management, and sanitation, which is wastewater and excreta management. And so we manage these four aspects in order that we can maintain the integrity of the natural environment, meaning we are trying to minimize the degradation of water, the soil, and the air. We are also doing this to make sure that the built environment, which has been set up, keeps in with the concept of ensuring that it does not degrade the natural environment. And so we have to make sure that when we are managing these four aspects, we have to make sure that it reduces people's exposure to diseases by making sure that a clean environment can be maintained both in the natural and built environment in a manner that breaks the cycle of diseases and also takes into consideration that these both natural and the built environment, they are actually being managed by humans with their own behaviors. They're going to use different facilities, and so there is an aspect of a context-specific management. For example, you're talking about low-income communities, you have certain behaviors or certain attributes that are associated with such groupings, which are going to be uniquely different to people that are living in affluent areas, which have, in most cases, have proper facilities. They are probably maybe a bit more aware about the environmental impacts of poorly managed solid waste or not having access to a proper sanitation facility. The other aspect of this sustainable sanitation concept is the waste itself, the sanitation products, where we talk about that it constitutes a mix of different streams, and that it also contains useful resources. So in what context can we ensure that we take advantage of this unique opportunity that we have useful materials in this waste? So to start with, we need to understand what are the different sanitation products. What are we dealing with when we talk about sustainable sanitation? For sustainable sanitation, you have to recognize that there's an aspect of stormwater management. As you can see from the image there, when we don't ensure that stormwater is managed in a habitat area, it actually creates environments that are unsanitary, that would encourage or be fertile grounds for the growth of pathogens and the spread of diseases. We have another aspect, which is grey water, which is basically water that is produced from activities such as laundry, also kitchen activities of washing plates and things like that. So grey water would contain a unique different set of characteristics compared to stormwater. We also have solid waste that in most cases, the picture there is quite common in most developing countries where solid waste remains uncollected and is a good fertile ground for the spread of diseases. We also have wastewater, which I think is quite common, where when we flush, this water is going to pass through the sewers and go in a central place where it's treated. So this also contains a very unique set of characteristics and constituents which we can take advantage of, or which we need to consider when we're handling it. There's also now fecal sludge, which is basically a combination of feces and urine, and in some cases a bit of flash water that is usually obtained from facilities that are locally based, or for example, the septic tanks. I think septic tank is much common feature or technology that people have come to use. So when waste is collected from such on-site facilities, this is called fecal sludge. It also contains a very unique set of characteristics which we can make use of. So you can see that just from our human activities, there's a lot of waste that we generate that we need to manage. And so where do we, in terms of waste that mostly is, in terms of waste that is highly contaminated, is mostly wastewater, fecal sludge, and grey water. And this is usually generated from products that comes out of ourselves as humans. And so there's the primary waste that we generate are urine, feces, and excreta. So we talk about urine. This is basically undiluted urine that is without any feces or water. So this is waste that when we go to a urinal, this does not include any water. So it's usually undiluted, it's quite highly concentrated. We have feces, which are solid excretion, but they also do not contain any urine or water. And then when you mix the urine and the feces, that's what we call as excreta. So when you defecate and urinate, a combination of that is what is called excreta. The other waste that we generate from our human habitation is grey water, which is water that is used for washing of foods, clothes, dishes, and in most cases people as well. And it does not contain excreta. So when you excreta is not there, you generated waste from your kitchen. That is called grey water, or from washing clothes, or from your bathroom. And then we have what are called organics, which in most bulky carbonaceous material that in most cases would come out of especially kitchen waste, when after you wash off after you wash your plates after a meal. So all of those solid substances, organic components, are called organics. And then you have flash water, which is basically water that is used to move excreta and urine or feces, to move it from the user interface, from the toilet to either a sewer. So when you flush water, then this will go out into the outlet. So this is also another waste that we generate. There is also other materials that we generate, including dry cleansing materials such as tissue. Some people will use corn cobs and paper to wipe themselves. We have also other annual cleansing, with what we call annual cleansing water. So for example, Yeah, it could either be a wiper or a washer. So those that wipe would use dry cleansing material. Those that wash would use annual cleansing water. And then we also have chemicals that are found that we generate. For example, when we wash clothes, when medicine is no longer reused, we usually just flush it. So these are part of the chemicals that we usually generate from our households. So these are the building blocks to the waste that comes out of our houses or institutions. And so, but when it goes out there, it usually goes in combinations. And so one of these combinations is what we call black water, which is a combination of urine, feces, flushing water, annual cleansing water, or dry cleansing material. So this is mostly a waste that is generated from your sanitary facilities, such as a toilet. Okay, and so the other one is what we call fecal sludge, which is basically, this is undigested or partially digested solid that results from the storage or treatment of black water excreta. So when black water leaves your households, goes into a containment such as a septic tank, it gets partially digested, and when it's removed after a period of time, this is called fecal sludge because it's usually partially digested. It's going to have different characteristics compared to black water. The other product, a combination of product that we end up having is what is called compost or humus. And so this is where when the organic components that we generate from our households have been treated, or they have been composted or decomposed at our premises, we end up having this brown or black material, which is usually quite rich in nutrients and can be used for various agricultural facilities or agricultural uses. And so in most cases, in what has happened over a period of time is that in most cases, we often plan only for black water. This is, most people would plan and demand to have sewers. It's because they're concentrating on black water. And we often neglect the other wastes or sanitation products that are produced, particularly fecal sludge, because we feel like this goes in a septic tank. We feel like that's it. That has been managed, and this has often been, so fecal sludge has often been forgotten, which ends up creating problems such as the contamination of the environment or the water bodies. And so now, what is contained in these wastes or these mixtures of the different wastes? So I've picked three main ones just to show the differences of in terms of the generation capacities for these, the human generation capacities for these waste streams, the nutrient content as well, and the level of contamination. And so we have grey water, urine, and feces. And so by far, we generate more grey water compared to urine and feces because we do a lot of laundry, we do a lot of washing and cleaning up in the kitchen, and we bath on a daily basis or even more. And so we generate much more grey water compared to urine and feces, but we generate more urine and feces annually as individuals. When we talk about the nutrient content, and here we've just focused on nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. By far the most rich of these three is urine. Urine contains more nutrients in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium compared to grey water and feces. But you can see that it's a bit mixed. You find a bit more potassium in grey water, I think because of the chemical components in our detergents that we use. But you have a bit more nitrogen and phosphorus in feces as compared to grey water. But when it comes to the level of contamination, and here we are looking at what is called the chemical oxygen demand and fecal contamination, meaning we are talking about how safe is this waste when you come into contact with. And so when you compare this, you see that urine doesn't contain any fecal coliforms at all. But feces contain a bit much more fecal coliforms, or basically more contamination. It's more contaminated compared to grey water, and then of course urine last. So this just shows you that even the grey water that we have at households, it actually is quite contaminated, and we also need to think about how we manage this. So touching a bit on the specifics of these waste streams. So when it comes to grey water, what has happened over the years is that people think grey water is safe. It doesn't contain any pathogens. Like I said, we generate much more grey water compared to any other waste. And so most cases, people will just let this grey water into the environment without any sort of treatment. And in most cases, it's quite huge in volume. But it has several issues or several levels of contamination that has potential to choke your sanitation system, such as the constituents of fats and oils arising from kitchens. You've got other toxic substances that are arising from our washing, such as bleach or chlorine. In some cases, you have quite a high concentration of organic compounds, especially from the use of the detergents. But grey water is not safe for reuse without any treatment. It contains pathogens, it contains chemicals, and so it also needs to be treated. Urine, we talked about urine not having any bacterial contamination. We're using the indicator of fecal coliforms, and by far having being rich in nutrients, being nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And so urine has been used extensively across the world to supplement the nutrient demand for agricultural activities. But the key is to make sure that it does not mix with any other waste because of the risk of cross-contamination. Also, what you see with urine is that it's not a stable waste stream. The composition of urine changes with time, and so in most cases you have to reuse it as soon as it's generated. If you look at some of the indicator chemical composition or nutrients, you see that, for example, urea component is quite high when the urine is fresh, but once it's stored over a period of time, there are chemical reactions that happen, or precipitation, such as in the end you lose much of the urine and it gets converted into ammonia. And also you see that there are other chemicals reaction that would happen that would change it, including it moving from a little bit acidic to it being alkaline. And so you have to bear in mind that urine is not a stable waste, and in most cases you have to be aware about the change in composition over time. Feces, on the other hand, also before I move away from urine, so on average, a human generates between 0.6 to about 1.4 liters of urine per day. On average, about a liter of urine per day. Coming to feces, on average, a healthy produces between 120 to 400 grams of feces per day. And like I said, this is mainly undigested organics. It contains all kinds of pathogens, including bacteria, viruses, humids, and protozoa. And so this is highly this is highly contaminated, and it can actually it presents a risk for pathogen. It exposes humans to pathogen, and that's the reason why it has to be immediately separated from the generator immediately it's produced. And so fecal sludge, I think people I think most people don't like even talking about feces, and they detest the smell. They are never comfortable with it. And so you might find it in two distinct characteristics or conditions. We have the thick yellow fecal sludge, which is mostly from unsewered toilets that are emptied frequently. So this is unstable sludge, but when it stays over a period of time, it turns into a thick black color, and this is a sign that it's a bit more of a sludge, meaning it's a bit more partially stable, but it's still septic, meaning it's still infectious. You can still there's still a lot of pathogens in the sludge, but at least it has become a bit partially stable. And so fecal sludge, like I mentioned, this is excreta, urine, and flash water that has been stored on on-site sanitation facilities for a period of time, and it's usually a semi-solid or slurry. Sometimes it might have gray water, sometimes it might not have gray water, and this is raw or partially digested. So meaning the chemical composition or the characteristics of it is very different from the fresh fecal sludge or the wastewater that's generated. The characteristics of fecal sludge changes or is influenced by several factors, including the duration that it stayed in these on-site sanitation facilities, the temperatures that exist in that particular area or in that particular containment. Also, it is also influenced by the other admixtures. For example, do you also add kitchen waste? Is there a solid waste that is finding itself in that containment facility? Is there grease that would impact on the quality of fecal sludge? Also, because we extract this fecal sludge from these containment facilities, it is also affected by the technology that we use to extract this fecal sludge. Certain technologies would require pouring water or diluting the fecal sludge before we can empty it, and so that changes the chemical composition. It also is affected by the performance of that container or containment. If it's very effective at treating, you find that the containment, the characteristics will be a bit more stable. But if it's not containing it, it's not adequately treating it, this might mean that it's much more highly contaminated and require a lot of effort to treat it. And so the characteristics of fecal sludge is highly variable. The fecal sludge characteristics from even toilets that are used by two neighboring families is going to be very different. The composition of fecal sludge or characteristics of fecal sludge over a period of time between neighborhoods, between cities, people of different economic category, it's going to be very, very different. And so one of the biggest challenge with sanitation is being able to predict the concentration or characteristics of this research, because all of those key factors that I've mentioned that influences the quality are so unique to any given area. And so one example of how the characteristics of fecal sludge changes over time, and also the type of facility that they are found in comparison with other waste. We have like three main parameters there: the chemical oxygen demand, the suspended solids, and ammonium. You can see that when you look at the characteristics of sewage, it's usually much lower compared to septage. So septage, this is fecal sludge, which is removed from septic tanks. And so this usually happens is because septic tanks have a lot of water in it. So, but you find that the concentration of these three parameters are much higher in septage compared to sewage. But also when you look at a public toilet, which gets to be, you see that the characteristics are even much more compared to sewage and septic. So this is just an example of how fecal sludge is different from wastewater, and is also different depending on which containment is being used. So wastewater as a resource, this is one of the aspects of the sustainable sanitation concept, that based on the various composition and characteristics of the waste that we're just discussing, some of these new compositions are useful for other economic activities. For example, wastewater contains water, so usually the majority of the component of wastewater is actually water itself. And so there is an opportunity that we can actually create a loop whereby this wastewater, we can treat and recover the water component and use it to recharge or reuse. Reuse it for other economic activities such as agriculture or irrigation, recharging either surface or groundwater resources. There is also nutrient component that we can use for agricultural purposes as fertilizer or soil conditioner. We also have other uses such as energy recovery. For instance, wastewater usually contain quite a significant amount of carbon that can be converted into methane gas, and this can be used for cooking purposes. And you can add in a bit of animal waste to increase the amount of waste of energy that is being generated. We also are looking at how do we manage the collection of this wastewater to ensure that we maintain a sanitary environment. We can use different means, including the use of centralized or decentralized wastewater systems. So centralized is where at city level you are collecting all the waste and taking it to one treatment point, one central treatment point, and after you treat it, you can dispose it in usually surface water. But this is not always that easy with the complexities of the cities that we live in, including challenges of urbanization, challenges of the terrain. And so in the end, we end up having what are called decentralized systems, or the use of decentralized systems, which will allow, for example, the collection of this waste at household level, or the capture of waste in regions in the city and treating it in those regions. and only maybe just getting rid of the treated water into the surface water sources. There are several benefits of going with decentralized systems, including benefits of being able to tailor-make your sanitation systems according to local conditions, minimizing the amount of fresh water for the transportation. And the angle here is that when you have centralized systems, you need a lot of water to run your sewerage systems. And so this in the context of the global challenges of climate change, water scarcity, it makes it quite difficult to have this amount of water to sustain such kind of systems. And so we need to find means in which we can reduce this. There are some limitations of decentralized sanitation systems, including challenges of availability of spaces or where to place these. You have challenges of management, challenges with monitoring and controlling these systems. We have certain regions of the countries that have regulations of that makes it so difficult to set up decentralized systems, and wanting to take away the treatment of waste far away from the habited area. And also some countries or some regulations would require a buffer zone between treatment facilities and habited area for the purposes of, in most cases, the prevention of odor or creating nuisance for the communities. In certain regions, they have used hybrid systems, a combination of centralized and decentralized systems, so that they can minimize the expense, or better strike a balance of convenience, the amount of fresh water that you need, but also being able to comply with the policies and regulations. The other aspects of sustainable sanitation refers to use of combination of technologies to make sure that to make the sanitation systems work. And so the first aspect for us to understand this, why do we need to use a combination of technologies in order to achieve a sustainable system, is that we need to understand what is the global goal for sanitation or for sustainable sanitation. So the global goal is to have a safely managed sanitation services. That means that every household or every house dwelling, they need to have their own private improved sanitation facilities, where the fecal sludge that is generated by that household is safely captured and is safely disposed either on-site, transported and treated off-site, and that they should also have a proper hand washing facility, that they use soap and water. So that's the global target. And the aim is that we need to achieve safely managed sanitation for all the world population. But the reality of the fact is that the majority of the global population either have no services, meaning they are defecating in the open, or some who have facilities, these facilities do not meet the basic standard, or they are unimproved, meaning they do not separate the excreta from human contact. So even after you use the facilities, for you to eventually, for you to manage that facility, you end up having to come into contact with that excreta, which means it doesn't provide a sanitary environment. We have some also that have what are called limited service. So limited service, this is where it's a use of an improved sanitation facility, which separates excreta from human contact just fine, but it's a facility which is shared with other households, meaning in the spirit of ensuring public health or human health, it doesn't do the job because the risk of passing on pathogens from one family to the other because of using a common facility still remains, and this really erodes the gains of having a proper sanitary facility. We have what is called basic services, which is the use of your own private improved facility, which will separate the excreta from human contact, but the waste doesn't get collected and safely treated, meaning it ends up polluting the environment and eventually polluting even other aspects such as your water sources, and these are going to end up impacting you when you use this facility. And so when we say a combination of technology are needed to achieve this sustainable sanitation, what we mean is that you have on the first hand or the first step a user interface, which is the toilet or the flush toilet that you're going to use, or a pizza tin, and then depending on what system it is, this waste, once you use that facility, the waste is going to be flushed or taken away through conveyance, such as, for example, a sewer system, or it's going to go into a collection and storage, meaning this is a septic tank at your premises. And after a period of time, this waste is going to be removed and taken away for either reuse or disposal, or also even the one which is conveyed ends up at the treatment facility. And once the treatment has been complete, the waste is environmentally safe, and is environmentally safe, it's going to be taken for reuse or safe disposal. And so to achieve safe managed sanitation, we will need the combination of all of these five main different aspects of sanitation. We need a toilet that's or user interface that will safely separate the waste, a collection and storage system that's going to partially store it until when it's taken away, and we have a mechanism that can take it away immediately. There has to be safely treated, and it has to be reused or safely disposed. And so what we have is that we have two distinct. In typical rural context, we end up having with more like a combination of three different technologies. And you have a user interface, which is waste is going to go to a collection and storage, and then from there is reused. The reason we have this typical combination is that in most rural areas, you don't have services that are able to empty the waste and carry it and take it to a treatment facility. You mostly don't have treatment facilities in rural areas, and that's the reason why most cases the waste has to be managed at household level. But in a typical urban context, particularly most of the European countries and most of the even urban African cities or developing country cities, you have user interfaces where this waste is then immediately conveyed through conventional sewers. It goes to a centralized treatment facility, and then once it's treated, the waste is either reused by it going into the water. For example, water being discharged into surface water, sometimes even used to recharge the aquifers, for instance, or you have then also products that are then also reused. For example, you've got biosolids that are used for agriculture or the production of biogas and the like. And also the last aspect has to do with the aspects of planning. So I won't touch on this because we have a session this Friday where we'll talk specifically about how do you go about planning to have a sustainable sanitation systems. But I think to just key highlights here is that it's important that the planning has to be done in a multi-stakeholder manner, looking at all the different developmental activities happening in that city or in that area, so that the sanitation responds to the needs of that city. And that means that you don't just borrow technologies or just copy and paste technologies that have been deployed in other countries. So what are the key takeaways as I end the introduction to the sustainable sanitation systems? Is that when we are talking about sanitation systems, we have to be cognizant that we have to look at the waste products that are generated from human habitation, this being solid waste, wastewater, grey water, fecal sludge, and also you have stormwater that finds itself in inhabited areas. And we have to think about those wastes from cradle to grave, meaning we have to make sure that we don't ignore the fact that this waste has to be collected, has to be treated, has to find a home, whether a reuse or disposal. And also we have to we have to understand that these waste products, even as far as we refer to them as waste products, they still contain considerable amount of resources in them that we can actually manage them separately and also find means of recovering these resources from them. When we're talking about the solutions that we use to manage these waste streams, by and large, the majority, most people would prefer centralized systems, but we see that decentralized solutions are often more appropriate in developing countries, which might not have the financial muscle for capital investment and operating such systems. Also, that when we're talking about a sanitary environment, we have to look at a combination of technologies in order that we can have a functional sanitation systems. And when you're talking about this combination of the technologies, we have to go for appropriate technologies, which are often non-technical aspects. So when talking about appropriate technologies, we're not just talking about technologies that we are familiar with, but it has to be technologies that have proven to work, technologies that are addressing the needs of that local context, including the social desires of the community or the social cultural aspects of the community. We also need to understand that when we talk about sanitation, it's a combination of the hardware and the software, meaning there is going to be facilities that have to be there for sanitation to work, but also there have to be services and there have to be behaviors. I think my colleague will touch on these services that we're talking about. And also we have to also acknowledge that when you're talking about examples or case studies of where sustainable sanitation systems have worked, they've had to think about a combination of hard and soft aspects, meaning looking at the infrastructure, looking at the policies, looking at looking at regulation, looking at operation and maintenance, and also sorting out the aspects of responsibilities to make sure that everyone plays a part. So it's a bit more complex than, say, we choose the best high-tech technology that is working in maybe London, we just borrow it. No, there's a whole lot of other aspects that we have to take into consideration. So that's the end of the introduction to the sanitation. That's the end of the introduction to sustainable sanitation principles and rationale. So I don't know if people have any specific reflections or questions, maybe we can use the next 5 minutes, and then we can then go on a 5 minutes break, and then we resume with the second. So maybe 5 minutes for any major clarifications. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question. Okay, so I'll take it there are no questions. So I think at this point, we're going to take a 5 minutes break. We'll resume at 10:26, where my colleague is going to pick it up and do the second part.
Mr.
Yes.
Kameya, good morning.
Yes, yes. Morning, morning.
Yes, this is Christine Aitana. I am part of the secretariat, the SGSP secretariat. I'm just here on behalf of Ms. Ronell, who actually organized the workshop. And for the purpose of visibility and promotional of the seminars, we would like to at least take a photo of the participants so that we can just make sure that we have these materials for promotional purposes. If I can maybe kindly just ask the participants to switch on the cameras, and then we can take a quick snapshot of the participants, if that's agreeable. Okay.
Just a second. All right, everybody smile. Thank you very much. That's done.
Okay,
I
great.
think we can go ahead to the break.
Sure, thank you very much. So yeah, so like I said, let's take a 5 minutes break. So now we'll resume at 10:27. Yes. All right. Hello. Yeah. So my colleague is just rejoining. Just bear with him a few minutes. Yeah, just a few minutes.
Yeah, just a quick announcement for those who are not SGSP students, please just drop your email addresses in the chat so that we are able to share the material for this week to all of the participants. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Yeah, apologies for the delay in joining in. Yeah, hope you had a wonderful first session on the introductory part. Yeah, so just to introduce myself. Yeah, so my name is Pride Kafwembe. Yeah, so I'm a sanitation expert based in Zambia. I'm so passionate about sanitation, and I've been practicing for the past over a decade now, here in Zambia, and also had a short stint in Uganda. So I'll be sharing my experience in practice with you, and also learning from you about this aspect of fecal sludge management. Yeah. Next slide, Kameya. Yeah, sure, Kameya partly covered this aspect. So maybe from anyone. So what does fecal sludge management involve? Or what is fecal sludge management? You can either shout or post in the chat box. Hello, anyone? Hello? Anyone, what is fecal sludge management? What does it involve? Okay, yeah, so I'm sure you've seen a chain on the screen. So that is called the sanitation service chain. Yeah, so fecal sludge management basically involve managing that chain. For communities or households relying on on-site sanitation. So basically it involves the storage of the fecal sludge, the emptying, transportation, and treatment, and their use aspect at the end of the sanitation service chain. Next slide, Kameya. Yeah, so this is the sanitation service chain. So it is similar to what was beamed on the previous screen. So it's just basically a framework to see how the fecal waste is flows was being managed in a town or in a city or in a society. So the sanitation service chain starts from access to the toilet, the emptying and transportation, treatment, disposal or reuse. So the management of that sanitation service chain is what we are calling fecal sludge management. So every aspect of the sanitation service chain is really important. So a chain is not stronger than any of the weakest link in the chain. So suppose people have access to the toilet, but there is no emptying and transportation services. That would be a problem. Yeah. So I think along the sanitation service chain, different technologies and approaches are possible. So there's also a need for institutions, resources, and organization to manage this sanitation service chain. So next slide, Kameya. Yeah, so this is the sanitation service chain and the what the global and what the global targets are. So there's a sanitation service chain, I think, for the sewerage. I think we are used to this, where you just flush in the toilet and the wastewater goes into the pipe network straight to the treatment plant. That is the off-site sanitation. And there's the fecal sludge management, which we've just spoke about. So this one focuses on on-site sanitation. Yeah, where there's where the fecal sludge doesn't pass into the pipe network to the treatment plant, but it should be emptied. The emptying equipment, the vacuum truck, or manual emptying equipment to the treatment plant. So regarding the MDGs and the SDGs, I think you've talked about this with the engineer Kameya. So the focus for the Millennium Development Goals was only to improve the containment part of the sanitation service chain. So the gap which was there, that it didn't focus on other parts of the sanitation service chain, which is the emptying, transport, and treatment. So yeah, a number of containment facilities, toilets were constructed during the MDG era, but there was no focus on the other parts of the sanitation service chain. Was it clear? There any questions up to this slide? Is it clear? Hello? Yes, please. You can go on. I can see a hand. Hello? Okay, Kameya, we can go to the
Mr.
slide.
Pedro Suhafeni, your hand was up. Was it a question? Sorry,
Clear.
Mr. Pride.
I wanted to react. It's clear.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
You can proceed, Mr. Pride.
Yeah, so we continue with the sanitation service chain. Yeah, so yeah, there are a number of them. I think we talked of the one for the sewerage part and also the one for fecal sludge management. So for fecal sludge management, there are a number of variations. So like in rural areas where there's like in Zambia, where they don't practice any emptying and transportation, they just bury a toilet. It could be a pit latrine. So when it fills up, they just bury it without any emptying and transportation services. Then, like what there's also the treatment on site where the toilet can be coupled with a treatment aspect. Then there's also, I think, what we talked about, the variation where there's emptying, transport, and treatment, where we could use emptying equipment to convey the sludge from the toilets to the fecal sludge treatment plants. There's also the container-based sanitation, where a removable container is used as a containment, and it's just collected and transported to the treatment facility once it is filled up. So these are the variations in the sanitation service chain which are there. So any questions, clarifications around that? Yeah, okay. So what is fecal sludge? I think this is something you discussed with the engineer Kameya. So basically it's the human waste which accumulates in on-site sanitation facilities. And in contrast with the wastewater, it does not pass through the sewerage system to the treatment plant. So it is highly variable in nature, and yeah, it's not consistent in terms of the quantity and the quality as compared to wastewater. So from the class, what other factors could contribute to the variability of the fecal sludge? Anyone to share the thoughts? Hello? Anyone to share the thoughts on what other aspects could make the fecal sludge highly variable? Any thoughts? Maybe I can point out. Is it okay if I point out? Because we need to be interactive. Hello?
I think you can go ahead and just point out.
Maria,
Yes, there is the hand. There's a hand by Miss Faith Shihumbiri.
Yes, I'll just give it a try. Can you hear me?
Make fecal sludge highly variable compared to wastewater, which is very consistent in terms of the quality.
Mr. Pride. Hello, Mr. Pride.
Hello, you can come. Hello.
Can you hear us, Mr. Pride?
Yes, yes, yes. I can hear you. Yeah.
Yes. So there is a hand by Miss Faith. I think she has a question, or maybe she wants to say something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can go ahead, please.
I think. Can you hear me, Christine? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Faith. You can go ahead.
Would issues such as people's diets and cultures also contribute to the variability?
Okay, so diet, culture. So how does the culture contribute to the variability? Can you cite an example?
The culture. Well, I think culture is quite directly it's got a strong link to diet.
Yeah.
Where people either eating people are either vegan, vegetarian, or they're eating meat or meat-based diet, or something like to that effect, and that could also then affect the quantity and consistency of the fecal matter.
Thank you so much for that. That contribution, yeah, indeed, diet really affects the variability, contributes to the variability of the fecal sludge. So there's also just an addition on the culture. I think we, like in Asia, a number of them are washers. While like in Africa, like in my country, Zambia, where I'm coming from, we use toilet paper. So the sludge for the washers and also for the non-washers to be variable. So that's also how culture can contribute to the variability of the fecal sludge. Next slide, Kameya. Next slide. Engineer Kameya, next slide. Oh, seem to have lost Kameya. Hello, Kameya. Hello. Senior Kameya, next slide. Okay, sorry a minute. Let me just text him. Apologies. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Kameya. Yeah, so these are the aspects which constitute the management of the fecal sludge from the from the on-site sanitation facilities. So it consists of the storage of the sludge, collection, transport, treatment, and also the reuse and disposal. So fecal sludge basically it's also it's a service which is provided to households who are not connected to the centralized storage system. So like I can give like an example here in Lusaka. We only have about 10 to 15% of the people who rely on the centralized storage system, and the rest are utilizing on-site sanitation facilities. So either a pit latrine or a septic tank or other forms of on-site sanitation facilities. So like in the case of Zambia, so this is this wasn't the focus for utilities who are providing water and sanitation services. They previously focused on providing sanitation services to households who are connected to the centralized storage system. I think there have been some regulatory reforms which have happened in the past years. So in 2018, the mandates for all water utilities mandated to provide water and sanitation services were expanded to also include this aspect of fecal sludge management, to also provide services to households who are not connected to the centralized storage system. And these are the majority actually in the city, and they reside mostly in low income areas. So most utilities, like here in Zambia, they are now focusing on providing this solution to households not connected to a centralized storage system. So I don't know, maybe it could be good to hear maybe from other countries. How is it like in Namibia? Is it, are you also doing the fecal sludge management approach? Anyone to share insights, or everyone is connected to the centralized storage system? Hello? Anyone to share insights on what is happening?
Hello, engineer, can you hear me?
Yes, you can come in.
Yes, thank you so much, engineer. Yeah, in the context of Namibia, I would maybe bring in two parts. First in the city, then maybe to the general to the towns outside. Yeah, mainly in the city, for example, much of the city is connected to the main wastewater treatment system, especially when it comes to wastewater management. Much of the city, unless it may be maybe in the suburbs, where probably maybe minimal kind of sanitation system are present, although there is present of sanitations in there, and that kind of sanitation should be connected still to the treatment system. So direct sludge management is not necessarily required as such. Although, however, if there are septic tanks, then in that case, such kind of waste should be, once septic tanks are full, should be disposed at, as well as if they're properly done, should be disposed at the wastewater treatment plant as well. Yes. So whereas outside, the main treatment system that are present generally in certain towns where there's not much good development, you talk about oxidation pond systems. And it's in places like those where you can have now where there are a lot of septic tanks, and also if you can relate, you talk about the bucket system. So such kind of a cases, sludge or the fecal sludge is now has to be contracted to be collected, either disposed at the oxidation ponds, or some who may not follow proper procedures, they may end up just discharging the sludge maybe elsewhere in the environment, which is not supposed to be the case. So I think those are the minor contributions I can give to you for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful contribution. Yes, it's good to hear and learn about the setup of that side. So in terms of the provision of like septic tank emptying, I don't know how's the setup? Who's mandated to do that? Like in the case of Namibia.
Yeah, I think, look, okay, let me come back again. Yes, local authority who are managing the wastewater in the place actually have to. Normally what they can do, they can also have what they call contractors. They can contract, people can go and empty the septic tanks. They are expected to go and dispose of the wastewater at the central, maybe oxidation ponds that are available. So mainly to the contractors, but under the management of the local authority.
Okay, thank you so much. It's good to it's good to hear that perspective and thought. Thank you for the contribution. Next slide, Engineer Kameya.
There's a hand
There
from
is a
Catherine.
hand. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, come again.
There's a hand from Catherine.
Catherine,
Catherine's hand was
you
up.
Yes, Catherine, you can come
Hello,
in.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, yeah. I was going to give you a scenario of what's happening in Botswana regarding, regarding the FSM chain. Mostly in the urban areas, we have like a centralized system where the waste is connected to a sewer line. And what's happening in the rural areas is those who are not connected to the sewer line, there's an arrangement for transportation by the utilities company. It's a service that the utilities company provide to collect the sludge from the toilets, mostly in homes. So, but then there's service you need to pay as an individual for them to come collect from your area. Otherwise, if you don't pay, then you end up having the problem of sludge accumulation in your homestead, and there's a fine which you are charged once you have such toilets, because it becomes a nuisance to your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for sharing that perspective from Botswana. Yeah, it's interesting to hear that. The rural areas were not connected to the centralized sewer system. They are being provided. This kind of service. Maybe I also wanted to understand in terms of the payments, how affordable is it, and is it regulated?
Yes, there's a standard fee that you pay that is set at the you call it the Water Utilities Corporation, the wastewater department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, at least most of the rural beneficiaries are able to afford.
It's fairly affordable.
Okay. No, thank you so much for sharing that that perspective. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah. So what's the global relevance of fecal sludge management? So globally, we have about 2.7 billion people who rely on on-site sanitation technologies. So it could be like pit latrine, septic tank, and other forms of on-site sanitation technology. So we have about 2.7 billion people. So these are not connected to the centralized sewerage system. So they will need fecal sludge management services. So if we zoom in Southern Africa, I think we have the majority, about 44% of the population relying on pit latrine. Others are also some good percentage of about 17% relying on the poor flash pits, and with a small percentage of about 7% relying on sewers. So the current population really in the region, they really need fecal sludge management services. Of course, yeah, the highest in terms of the sanitation service level is we want everyone to be sewered, everyone to be connected to the centralized sewerage system. But this is the reality, and the fecal sludge management has come in the solution to also provide as a means of service delivery to households not connected to the centralized sewerage system. So if you look the northern part in Europe, in America, North America, I think a number of them utilizing sewerage system. So in that part of the region, yeah, there's no need for FSM services. So yeah, so on-site sanitation is here with us, and yeah, we really need to provide these services to households not connected to the centralized sewerage system. Because the consequence is that these services are not provided. Like I can give an example, like in Lusaka, like in low income areas where the majority are relying on pit latrine. I think we had a major cholera outbreak in 2017, and the major contributing factor were these on-site sanitation facilities, because a number of them were not lined, and the fecal matter would find itself in groundwater. And the majority of the population in Lusaka, they rely on groundwater as their source of drinking water, and also as the utility, the Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company, which is providing water and sanitation services in the city of Lusaka. 60% of the of the water production comes from groundwater sources. So if that resource is not protected by constructing proper on-site sanitation facilities which are lined, so that there's no reduces speculation into the groundwater, and also these services are not being provided, yeah, there is so much risk of groundwater contamination. So it's really an essential service to also protect the groundwater and also the public health at large. Next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, so as I think as mentioned earlier on, yeah, so the majority of the population actually they rely on on-site sanitation technologies, and yeah, in most cases there seem to be no management system for the accumulated fecal sludge in these on-site sanitation facilities. So FSM in this case becomes critical and essential. and it's playing an important role in solving most of the sanitation challenges globally. And comparing the costs between the fecal sludge management and also the convention sewers. I think there was a study which was done by Jordan in 2012. So they found that the cost of FSM is 5 times less expensive than conventional sewers. So of course, where there's limited resources, so FSM can come in as a solution. And also, where funds could allow, the golden solution is conventional sewers, because everyone will just want to flush and forget about the other processes. So next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, so for the for FSM to be effective, the entire sanitation service chain needs to be managed sustainably. So yeah, I think from the chain you can see that there are interactions along the sanitation service chain. So there is a containment. So under containment, there are different stakeholders. There are find households there. On emptying and transport, I think we are given an example like what is happening in Namibia, Namibia, where private operators are contracted to empty and transport the waste. There's also the treatment. So there are a number of stakeholders interacting along the sanitation service chain, and there are a number of transactions also happen. I think we were given an example like in Botswana. So for the households, even in Lusaka, for the households to access the service, they need to make it. They need to pay for the service which has been provided. There is also the approach which is which is called the citywide inclusive of sanitation. So the citywide inclusive sanitation, it's also an approach to deliver sanitation services. So depending on the city, it encourages utilization of mixed methods. So it could be the sewers and also fecal sludge management. So depending on the various technical conditions, financing in the city, so you could utilize any of the approaches. The next slide, Kameya. Oh, I don't know, from the class and from the discussions we've had, what could be some of the issues and challenges regarding fecal sludge management? They could give maybe examples from your countries where you're coming from, or from what we discussed. What could be the issues and challenges regarding FSM? So anyone?
Minare, you can go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, engineer. I think one of the main issues that comes up from your lecture and also from observations here is the issue around on-site sanitation for informal settlements, where residents are digging their own pit latrines and not having sort of a good way of disposing of the fecal sludge. So that also keeps it a bit of a challenge for the possible contamination of groundwater. That's one of the major issues. And then the second one is one of the last slides that you presented showed that on-site sanitation is more affordable, but for the majority of people in Namibia, at least based on studies, they view it as an inferior form of sanitation access. And it also has a way where we don't get a lot of support from local authorities to provide on-site sanitation as a solution for sanitation challenges. So those are just some of the observations I've made from the presentations and also from working with communities and informal settlements. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing those insights and perspective. Yeah, indeed. Actually, this aspect of it's viewed as an inferior form of service. I think even here in Zambia, I think we had it actually, especially I think around years before 2010 or so. But I think for us, I think what we did also was also to try and formalize this service, because the people who are doing it, they were not formal. By then, it wasn't the mandate of the utility. So it's just informal emptiers in communities where they just empty the toilet and just dispose it anyhow in the environment. But it was a journey for the utility, which started, I think, in 2012 to try and formalize this kind of service. So, yeah, the utility had to engage, had to identify actually these illegal informal emptiers in communities. I think we started with the two compounds here in Lusaka. So we had to identify them, try them, or train them on how they could provide safe empty services, and also capacitated them in terms of safe equipment which they can use to empty the latrines, and also there was also support to construct fecal sludge treatment plants in those communities. So we kind of tried it to formalize the service. So from 2012 to about 2018, we are just doing the pilot, and from the lessons we learned from the pilot, we even had to scale up to the entire city. And I think it's a service which has been appreciated. Even the pit emptiers who are doing it, they are doing it in a professional manner. They have proper equipment to provide a safe service. So so that kind of inferiority, for us, it's becoming the thing of the past. Yeah, though there are also still some pockets where this service is regarded as inferior. So I just thought maybe I could also share that from the Lusaka perspective. So I don't know if there are any other thoughts, contributions from the class around the challenges.
There's a hand from Mumbe.
You can come in.
And Jimmy Katambo. So Mumbe, you can go through them, Jimmy.
All right. Good morning, engineer. Thanks for the presentation, insightful presentation. So there are two issues that have, or challenges that I've picked up. I think the first one maybe could be public awareness of environmental issues. There's some people who may not know that septic tanks actually need to be emptied when they are full. So normally you find that if someone runs on a decentralized system, once it's full, they'll just move to another spot, dig a new one. And that's more like increasing the risk of contamination in case of leakages and all. So I feel that's a challenge that may need to be addressed. Then the other thing is on the standards of storage facilities or septic tanks. I think we've got a case where people don't adhere to standards. Standards may be there, but people don't stick to them because probably the people we get to construct such facilities lack certain technical skills. So risks of leakages, are always there. And then there's also now that transferred risk of contaminating groundwater and just the environment as a whole. Yeah, so from my end, I think these are the two issues or challenges which I feel may need to be addressed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those insights and contribution. So I don't like from the standards. I don't know from your side, are the standards available? Is it just the issue of enforcing those standards? What could be the challenge on the standard? Sorry, I didn't get it properly.
Oh,
we have
again. So on the issue of standards, most municipalities may have standards, but it could be an issue of enforcing. But I'm sure there are some that don't have. I don't have a clear picture there. But either of the two, I think, is creating a problem. If standards are not there, no one will, follow whatever right standard might be accepted to hold on to this waste. Or if at all standards are there, we don't have enforcers. So every Jim and Jack, even myself, I may not be a bricklayer, but I may just decide to construct one, and we don't expect it to work as a plan.
Yeah, no, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think this issue of enforcement is really a challenge in most cities. Also here in Lusaka, it could be standards regarding public health regulation, but also the enforcement aspect even here has been a challenge. Yeah, so I think I've seen another hand.
Yes, for me, I would like to point out a challenge that I've observed from Lusaka's point of view. The way Lusaka has been built and also the lack of planning and the mushrooming of illegal settlements. Yeah, so that creates a challenge in terms of fulfilling some of these goals. Yeah, so in the latter one, the illegal settlements, there are so many of them and most of them have been built without any consideration on the issue of sanitation. And the toilets may be bad in those areas, and they have led to the contamination in terms of the groundwater. Yeah, and then again, it takes time for the supplying companies or the city councils to work on what is available there. I mean, what is thrown on the ground in terms of the mushrooming toilets that are not structured, and the garbage and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I see it from that point of view also. The way the city was planned and also the illegal mushrooming of houses and so on.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for bringing out that contribution and insight. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's really a gap in terms of how these areas are being planned. Actually, the planning actually, ideally, if maybe a new settlement is being developed, ideally services should go there first. So it should be water, sanitation, and then people start building. Yeah, but I think there's a gap in terms of coordination between the local authority, the service providers. So it has led to this mess we are in the city of Lusaka. It's really a huge challenge. Yeah, thank you for that contribution. Next slide, Engineer Kameya.
Before we proceed, sir.
Yes.
For this example, like that you're from talking about, say the case of Lusaka.
Yeah.
What can be the way forward to try and clean up the mess? From the talk, it's like everyone understands to say, okay, there's this challenge. So what are some of the ways in which the system can be rectified?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think what is being done, I think there's some bit of coordination, I think, which has started to take place. I think there was in the city of Lusaka, the committee which has been established, which they are calling the Joint Implementation Team. Yeah, so it consists of various stakeholders, so from the local authority, the service providers, so that's so that committee really they share like insights on how the planning is going, and also in terms of service provision with the service providers. So it's a platform where they are sharing like what the plans they intend to do, like from the local authority, opening up new areas. So they are incorporating like service providers in that platform, so that they could be that kind of coordination. And also in terms of the systems, they've developed a system which they are calling the Lusaka Sanitation System, where all these stakeholders are collaborating in terms of delivering sanitation services in a planned and coordinated manner. So if all the stakeholders have access to this platform as well. So I think there could be other initiatives, but I think those are the ones I could think of. I don't know. Do you have any insights on what could be done so that this can be addressed, or any others who can have insights around that?
The other point I would like to raise there is that, for example, on the illegal allocation of land, when there is that illegal allocation of land, then people build and then they do not consider the sanitation issues. What should be done is that there should be a way of taking care of those people and also reallocating them to some other place or places. But then what I've observed is that because it is mostly political, you have politicians wanting to please the people, and so they may not do that. They may not reallocate those people. And sometimes there are cases in Lusaka where people have built on, on top of some water system, or maybe there are some pipes there and so on. Yeah, so I would love to see a change where politicians do not have to bend on the issue of votes. They just go ahead and reallocate those people and do the right thing. Yeah, so that's my observation there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. Politicians really play a huge role in ensuring that there's sanity in terms of this illegal allocation of land and all that. So yeah, I think it's a very good contribution from your end.
Okay,
Yeah,
engineer,
so
just a final one. Sorry.
you
May I
can
go?
come in. Yes, please. Yes.
Oh, okay. Just to add on to what Jimmy said, illegal allocation or illegal access to land will be something that will be happening over time. It has been happening for the past 50, 100 years across the world. It will happen. But I think one thing that we need to do as governments, as practitioners, is to continue or at least to improve the sharing of information and educating our communities on the issues around fecal sludge management and how to build safe on-site sanitation options, even if there is no regulations or even if there is no, what do you call it, implementation of standards. There needs to be robust awareness creation for communities, because people are going to grab land and find solutions for housing either way, whether politicians are not going to bend on this or not. So I think we need to improve on the awareness creation and also education for communities on safe on-site sanitation options. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's a great contribution. Yeah, indeed, awareness really make a huge impact in this space. Yeah, thank you for bringing out that. Yeah, so I think we've talked about a number of challenges. I thought I could bring out also this is also issue of affordability in terms of services. So like the case of Lusaka, the emptying phase, like those requiring their pit latrine to be emptied, septic tank, it's not regulated at the moment. So yeah, also it tends to be monopolized, and the services tends to be unaffordable. And also in terms of accessibility, especially in the low income areas where it could be challenges in terms of where vacuum truck access the toilet facilities because of poor access roads. So it's difficult to provide services to such communities. Also, there are also aspects of fecal sludge, the availability of fecal sludge treatment plants. So, yeah, this issue of fecal sludge management, I think it's just gaining more track. So, in terms of treatment, what is existing in most cities are wastewater treatment plants, and those were constructed to just treat the wastewater, not the fecal sludge. But what is happening is we're also using those wastewater treatment plants to treat the fecal sludge. But the fecal sludge has got different characteristics which were not put into consideration when designing those wastewater treatment plants. So that has also contributed to failure of these wastewater treatment plants, because we are subjecting it to treat waste which wasn't designed, which we're subjecting the wastewater treatment plant to be treating fecal sludge, which wasn't part of the initial design for the plant to handle. So yeah, of course, yeah, there are a number of cases now in cities where these fecal sludge treatment plants are coming up just to specifically treat the fecal sludge from these sanitation facilities. Yeah, so so the solutions to overcoming most of some of these problems, we need to design functional and sustainable FSM systems where the whole chain is, the whole sanitation service chain is addressed, and not only from the technical point of view in terms of technology, but also the financing, the cultural aspect, the environmental aspect are also into consideration. Next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, so what are some of the technological interventions or solutions for pre-sludge management? Yeah, so I think from the previous slide, the sanitation service chain consists of those aspects: the user interface, we have the containment, which is the storage, and also the emptying and transportation. So what are some of the technological innovations around the sanitation service chain? So next slide, come in. So at the user interface, I think we have a number of innovations or solutions around. So those are just examples. So we have the toilet seats we are used to. So that's the user interface technology. So we've got different types, as you can see from the screen. So next slide, come here. Yeah, and also there are also these types of pedestals. So yeah, we have those which can separate urine from feces, and there's also I think this design toilet which we are used to, the flushing system. Yeah, so there are a number of also innovations around the types of pedestals. So next slide, come here. Yeah, so that's basically the first part we are talking about, which is the user interface and the containment. Can go to the next slide. Yeah, we also have this type, which is a squat pan, which are squatting arrangements. So yeah, so it tells that when using it, one needs to squat. So they're also like the one on the bottom right here. So this one is a squat pan, but also a urine diversion system, which can separate urine and feces. Because there is also this suspect, I think, which has come up where urine can be utilized as a fertilizer. So this kind of toilet, they separate the urine and feces, and yeah, there are these researches which are going on, but urine can also be used as a fertilizer because it constitutes, I think, the elements which the chemical fertilizer constitutes. So it can be one form of harvesting, can be one type of toilet which can be used to harvest the Go to the next slide. Next slide, come. Yeah, there is also this type of toilet for the physically challenged. Yeah, so this is in Lusaka actually, because we had a project to upgrade on-site sanitation facilities in 3 selected low-income areas. So this was specifically designed for the physically challenged. So I think you can see the ramp there. So if they have the wheelchair can be possible for them to access that kind of facility. Because we also wanted, we didn't want to exclude anyone during the design of the toilet and also during the implementation of the project. So we were also cognizant the fact that there could be people who could be physically challenged, and we need also to carry them on board. So we designed that kind of facility. So you can go to the next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, so this is the inside of one of the toilets for the physically challenged. So, okay, as you can see, there's also inside an handle where they can at least balance up and all that. So next slide. Yeah, I think there are also these others globally. And see those with stairs. So for the physically challenged, it will be difficult. They will be excluded from accessing that kind of facility. So I think when designing some of these toilet facilities, yeah, it's good also to sure that there is inclusivity in the design for the physically challenged. So yeah, the design should also encompass the gender issues as well for the women as well. So next slide. Yeah, so this is in Lusaka. So to my far left, yeah, so that's one of the existing type of toilet which has been used in one of the compounds, and the other two, these are the one we are upgrading. So if you look, the one on my far left, say during the rain season, it will be difficult to access such kind of the toilet. It doesn't have a roof, and also for women, it can be a serious concern in terms of security and also dignity in utilizing such kind of a facility. And also, there is no lining which is provided on that facility, so it could risk contaminating the groundwater because there is no form of lining which is provided. So these new ones which were upgrading, we provided for the lining so that there's no percolation into the groundwater. We also had to provide the access point for the emptiers, those who empty these facilities. So provided for the access point just behind the toilet where they could just open and then access the contents of the toilet without breaking the toilet. So next slide, Kameya. Yeah, there are also these flying toilets. Yeah, where one would use the plastic and just throw into the environment. So yeah, this is happening actually in our cities and countries. Next slide. Yeah, there's also open-defecation. So there are also others who are defecating openly. They don't have access to any toilet facility, so they just ease themselves in the bush or in nearby space they can find. So next slide. Yeah, I think we spoke talked about this urine diversion type of toilet. So it separates the urine and the excreta. So for those for the aspect of maybe utilizing urine as a fertilizer, so this kind of toilet separates the two contents. So yeah, there are a number of versions for the males and females. But also this one also comes up with cultural challenges. I think we had piloted one of these facility, but what was found out, what came out was a cultural challenge, because you need to explain on how the toilet can be used. So like in our culture, like in Zambia, maybe your in-law has come to visit. How can you explain the usage of the toilets to the in-laws? So there are all those cultural challenges which came out when we were piloting this kind of facility. So next slide, Kameya. So we've done with the first part, which is the user interface and the containment. So we are now moving on to the next stage of the sanitation service chain, which is the emptying and transportation. So yeah, we've talked about the first stage, which is the access to the toilet. We've looked at the number of the variety of toilet facilities, the user interface. So now we want to collect the accumulated sludge from these on-site sanitation facilities. So emptying and transportation ensures that the accumulated waste in these facilities is removed and transported to the treatment plant, basically with the aim of protecting the public health and the environment. So there are a number of technologies which are utilized. So they could be manual and also mechanical emptying and transportation technology. So next slide, Kameya. Yeah, so these are some of the technologies which can be utilized to empty and transport sludge. So top right, top left there, and top left and right. There's a vacuum truck. Sure, we are familiar with these trucks. So those are used to empty mostly the septic tanks. And also on my far left below, there is a mechanical dislodging unit. So this was being trailed in Kenya, so it can be used to empty and transport the fecal sludge from on-site sanitation system. So it's a bit small in nature. So at least in terms of accessibility, it can traverse in areas where there seem to be access challenges. So next slide, Kameya. Yeah, there's also the pit vac. So this one we have it here in Lusaka. So it's a small equipment which works on a vacuum principle. So the beauty about it is that it is small in nature. So areas with the accessibility challenges, because you can only assemble it on site. So it does an advantage on aspects of accessibility. So I think that's the photo shows there the emptying operation by the emptiers. So it's a mini small small vacuum like I can say, because it operates on a vacuum principle. You can go on the next slide, Kameya. Yeah, there's also this manual operated mechanical emptying equipment. I think the top photo there, I think that's in Bangladesh, where they were trailing that kind of equipment. So these are just low-cost pumps, and they can be used to empty sludge with low viscosity and with the on latrines with the little solid waste. So yeah, can go to the next slide. Yeah, there's also the manual emptying equipment. So these are small capacity. So basically, these are just modified garden tools. So if you can see from the right on my right there, that's the scooper. So just scoop the waste from the latrine and put it in the bucket. So yeah, the disadvantage with that, is that they could be it could present some risks to the emptiers who are emptying the pit latrine, because they are exposed to the sludge. But also, on the advantage part is that it can be applicable to empty sludge, which is very thick, because you just scoop. Yeah, in areas where there are access challenges because of its small capacity. So it consists of a number of range of equipment. So from scoopers, rakes, and also barrels where they put the waste after emptying. So you can go to the next slide, Kameya. Yeah, in terms of transport, yeah, there are these human-powered transportation equipment. So it's small in nature. You can only load limited capacity, and their travel ranges as limited, as low speed. So they are not suitable to transport waste to long distances. In terms of the advantage, they can be applied in areas where there are access challenges. Go to the next slide. And there are also these motorized transport, which are large in nature. So the vacuum trucks, the light trucks. So these are suitable for long distances, but also limited in areas where there is where there are issues in terms of accessibility. So you can go to the next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, so what criteria can one use to select an appropriate emptying and transportation technology? Of course, the first one is what to utilize proven technologies. So where research has been done on them, there is enough evidence for it to operate. So that could be one criteria. Could also go for innovative technologies, but also for this, there should be at least some evidence which have been gathered on them for them to operate. Also, another aspect which can be considered, would go for sustainable, potentially suitable technologies. So these are technologies which are affordable, which can be affordable to the locals, And also regarding maintenance, there could be spares locally in case of the breakdown. And also another criteria is one technologies that increases also service level. So in terms of hygiene, time, and also the value for money. And also what technology which can improve the well-being and working condition of the workers, like the pit emptiers, those who are emptying that latrines. Is it providing safety to them as they conduct the emptying operations? And also another aspect to consider is the technology that increases service level. From the pit emptiers point, as I mentioned, so this could be hygiene, the workload, and also is it an efficient machine for them to do their work efficiently. So those are some of the things which can be looked at, maybe if you want to settle, procure a technology to empty and transport the fecal sludge. Next slide, Kameya. You can go to the next one. Yeah, so under emptying and transportation, there are also transfer stations. So transfer stations, these are just in temporary storage facilities for the fecal sludge. I think this is applied also in the solid waste management. I think in markets like here in Zambia, the local authority puts big transfer stations where people could dispose the solid waste, and then maybe once a week or so, the bigger truck would come and collect that bin and take it to the transport to the landfill. So that's the similar approach to transfer station in fecal sludge management. So it's just a temporary storage where maybe emptiers with small equipment, they will dispose the fecal sludge, and then a bigger truck could come, maybe depending on how that is the arrangement is planned, it can come maybe twice or once in a month. The bigger truck would come on a specified period to come and empty that transfer station. So it's just a temporary storage facility. Of course, there could be some form of treatment which happens in that kind of facility. Can go to the next slide, Kameya. So these are just examples. Next slide. Yeah, so these are just examples of transfer station. So it could be the previous one. Yeah, so there could be a fixed transfer station where small trucks would dispose, then a bigger truck would come and empty the fixed transfer station. There are also mobile transfer stations where this is just maybe a larger vacuum truck which can collect from small vehicles. This is aimed at increasing efficiency in terms of service delivery. So those are just examples of those temporary storage facilities called transfer station. So they could be fixed or they could be mobile. Next slide, Engineer Kameya. So we now come at the treatment aspect of the sanitation service chain. So first started looking at the user interface and the containment. Now we've collected the waste. Now taking it to the treatment plant. So what kind of technologies can be used to treat this fecal sludge? So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so technologies in terms of fecal sludge treatment has evolved. Yeah, so in terms of level of technology development, there are established technologies which can be used to treat fecal sludge. So so these are technologies where research has been done, and there's a lot of evidence that this technology can actually treat the fecal sludge. And they are also transferring technology. So these are technologies which have been gotten from other fields like waste management, wastewater treatment. So they are being transferred from those aspects to be utilized in treating the fecal sludge. So they are not solely meant to treat fecal sludge, but they are being transferred from other aspects. Like I mentioned, they've been used maybe to treat solid waste. They've been used to treat wastewater. So now they are being transferred now to see if they can be used to treat the fecal sludge, considering its variability in characteristics. There are also innovative technologies. Yeah, fecal sludge management has been quite a new field. Of course, it's been there, but I think it's just gaining track. So there are a number of innovative technologies which are coming up to see if they can treat fecal sludge. So those are some of the innovative technologies which have been innovated: pyrolysis, pelletizing. Of course, these have been pyrolysis has been there, especially in waste management. There's also ammonia treatment. Also, fly larva. It's an innovative technology where they are using flies to treat the fecal sludge. So these are kind of technologies which are there, and their level in terms of technology development. So I think from the examples, you can see that under established technologies, we have planted drying beds, composting, settling, thickening tanks. Then those which have been transferred from other fields, wastewater, solid waste management, we have anaerobic digestion, incineration, also then composting, where worms are used to treat the sludge, and also mechanical watering. This has been used in wastewater treatment. So you can go to the next slide, Engineer Kameya. So in terms of the goal really for treatment is we want to the overarching goal is that we want to get rid of the pathogens in the fecal sludge so that we protect the environment. But also there are also other treatment objectives which can be considered to enhance the treatment, and also we are also considering value addition to the fecal sludge. So the first treatment objective is solid liquid separation. So where we just want to separate the liquid part of the sludge and the solid part. So there are a number of technologies which can be used. So we have the planted drying beds, mechanical watering, also the settling thickening tanks. So these can be used to separate the solids and liquids. So in case if we want to handle the liquids separately, the solids separately, so we can design a fecal sludge treatment plant based on that treatment objective. There's also an aspect of, there's also another treatment objective where we want to stabilize the sludge. We just want to get rid of the organics. So there could be technologies which can be utilized to just stabilize the sludge. But also, if you want to manage the nutrients, maybe you want to reuse the sludge, recover some resources, we can design a plant based on that treatment objective. But also, as I mentioned, the overarching goal is we want to get rid of the pathogens. Once we empty the sludge from on-site sanitation systems, transport to the treatment plant, we want to get rid of the pathogens, so that we protect the environment and the public health at large. That's the more reason we are emptying and transporting, so that we remove the pathogen, we take away the pathogens from the community and treat it separately at the treatment plant. So those are kind of the technologies which can be utilized. So I think it's 12 hours already. I don't know if I can just be given 5 minutes just to rush through the remaining slides. I don't know if it's okay.
It's okay.
Is it okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Okay, let me just rush through the remaining slides. So if you want to maybe choose the treatment options, what decision criteria can be utilized? So need to look at the volume and also the characteristics of the sludge which needs to be treated. Also need to look at the levels of treatment required. I think in our various countries there are standards on the levels of effluent to be disposed in the environment. So we need to look at what standards are there locally, and the design of the treatment plant will be done based on that. Also need to consider the location and space availability, and also aspects of upgrading in future. Operation and maintenance costs is key, political, and also if there is demand for use of fecal sludge products, human resource, and also financing is a very key aspect to consider. Can go to the next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, so these are just examples of the fecal sludge treatment options and their treatment objectives. I think we've looked at this in the previous slides. You can go to the next slide, Engineer Kameya. So this is just a typical combination of technologies to form a fecal sludge treatment plant. So depending on those treatment objectives we talked about, a treatment plant can be configured in this arrangement. So yeah, we could start with screening, where we want to get rid of the large solid waste, then go to primary treatment using the aerobic tank, then post effluent. So the aerobic tank there is separating the liquids and the solids. So the solids taken to the sun drying beds for watering. Then the effluent continues in other treatment units. So this is just a combination of those treatment systems we talked about, based on those on the treatment objectives. Can go on the next slide. Yeah, this is also treatment flowchart for one of the fecal sludge treatment plant we designed here in Zambia. So that is how it was laid out based on what the treatment objective, what we wanted to achieve at the end of the treatment. So there could be a number of combinations of these treatment units, but I think what is important is to look at the objectives. What do we really want from this treatment plant? So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so those are just screens for screening the solid waste at the treatment plant. Can go to the next one. Yeah, those are drying beds. Actually, this is in Osaka. So it's one of the fecal sludge treatment plants we are constructing. So those are drying beds where the fecal sludge, which will be used to dry the fecal sludge. You can go to the next one. And these are stabilization ponds. It is also a form of treatment for fecal sludge. You can go to the next one. And also, at the end of the sanitation service chain, there's also aspect of reuse. If we want to utilize the fecal sludge, recover some resources, or use the fecal sludge. So it can be used for agricultural purposes. It can generate gas. There are all products. There are a number of products which can be covered from fecal sludge, but also could also take into consideration the standards in respective countries. So yeah, I know World Health Organization has standards in terms of the reuse as standards in terms of the wastewater products. But for us, like in Zambia, this is when we are developing like the code of practice for fecal sludge management, which has also encompassed the reuse aspects in terms of standards, because it can be risk, actually, maybe using the treated sludge in gardening. So don't know the quality, the standard which needs to be for it to be used in gardening and all that. So it's risk as well if there are no standards in place to go into this aspect of reuse. Can go to the next slide, Engineer Kameya. Yeah, also wanted like to present just this case study for Lusaka, like the intervention, the fecal sludge management interventions we did. So I'll just run you quickly. So yeah, so after the mandate was expanded in 2018 for utilities to be providing fecal sludge management, we designed and implemented the performance-based contracting model for improved FSM services in Osaka. So you can go to the next slide. So this focused in low-income areas. So talk about this sanitation city profile for Osaka, this existing services, the approach we took, and also just some highlights of the performance-based contract and the impact we've achieved so far. Can cut the next slide. Yeah, so this is the city profile, the sanitation city profile for Lusaka. So for sewers, we have about 11%. Then the majority, which is 85%, they rely on on-site sanitation systems. And 4% defecating openly. So, and we also did, on my right, there's a sheet flow diagram. So this is just showing how the waste is being managed in the city. So it's a diagnostic tool which really helped us to also plan for the intervention. So from this heat flow diagram, it was established that only 17% of the city's waste was safely managed, and 83% was going into the. It wasn't safely managed, so it was going into the environment, possibly polluting the environment, also possibly contaminating the groundwater. And I think, as I mentioned, the current water production, like for Kashweka City, it's about 275,000 cubic meters. I think the demand is over 500,000 cubic meters per day. And we have 60% coming from the groundwater. So imagine with this 83% of the waste which is not safely managed. So the groundwater is really vulnerable to fecal contamination. So you can go to the next slide. So in terms of the sanitation services, so we have the vacuum truck service providers, and also the manual emptiers who are providing pit emptying services in low-income areas to households on-site sanitation facilities, either pit latrine or septic tank. So for the on-site sanitation in low-income areas, it wasn't the focus of these septic tank operators, because it wasn't lucrative in terms of the monies they were making compared to the septic tank market. So you can go to the next slide. So to also develop the pit emptying market, which wasn't the focus of these private operators, we had to implement what we called the performance-based contract. So this focused on making the pit emptying services affordable in these low-income areas, and also to trigger the demand. So we had to we also wanted to enhance like the capacity of the private operators to also provide pit emptying services to the low-income communities. So we had to zone the city, Kashweka City, into 3 zones, and we had to tender for performance-based contracts for provision of pit emptying services, and each zone got about 4 service providers to provide the services on a competing basis, actually. So they would compete for clients. You can go to the next slide, Kameya. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we contracted 4 service providers in each zone to provide services on a competitive basis. And there was also a top-up subsidy which was provided for households in low-income areas, so that we can make the service affordable, and also to incentivize the private operators to also target the pit latrine market. So, but also their performance in terms of accessing the subsidy, it was linked to the performance of those contractors. So that's just the summary of how the contract was structured. And also we did quite some awareness increase came out as one of the challenge, I think, from one of the colleagues here. So we had to put billboards in the city. We had to go into these communities to take the message that we are providing this safe service, want to protect the groundwater. So that's just the marketing materials on one of the elevated tank regarding the emptying services we are providing. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this was how just the the payments was organized. So we had to provide a top-up subsidy to make the service affordable, and also incentivize the private operators to also target the pit latrine market. So that was the aim of the top-up subsidy. But it was planned that it was the household contribution was increased on a yearly basis, so that at the end of our business plan, the household, at the end of the 5-year business plan, the household will be able to pay the full cost of service. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this has been the impact. So I think from January 2020, we've serviced over 14,000 pit latrines in low-income areas, which has benefited over 200,000 people. And we've safely collected over 41,000 cubic meters of fecal sludge. And we've also activated, we also have an active private operators also targeting the low income areas, because they've seen that it's a huge market, because 70% of the city's population in Lusaka, they rely in these low income areas. So they are now targeting that market. So we've also built the capacity of the private service providers, provided with them with equipment, and also households now are aware about the services utilities providing, and we have the call center now, so they are able to call and request for a service when their latrine is full. So the graph just shows how the progress has been since we started in 2020 regarding the volumes which have been emptied so far. So yeah, there were peak periods, and there are also low periods with the different factors contributing to that. So could be seasonal variation, also so the capacity of the service providers, because there was a period when they didn't have equipment, so also, that also contributed to the volumes which were transported to the treatment plants. So there were a number of factors which contributed to these variations. So I think this ends my presentation. Thought I should just share this case on how Lusaka Water went about this FSM service provision. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Mr. Is it Pride Kafwembe who was presenting?
Hello?
Do we have Pride still online?
Yes, I'm online. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any questions from participants before we call it a day? Any questions, any burning questions that you would want to pose, or any contribution for today? Okay, so I don't see any hand. Thank you so much for your presentation today. I think we have another one tomorrow. Is it the two of you presenting again tomorrow?
Yes, yeah. So just to mention that tomorrow between 9 and 12, we'll be looking at solid waste and wastewater management in the context of sustainable sanitation. Yes, so the two of us are going to be here.
Oh, okay. May I also request that you could send your slides for today
Sure.
to Ronel? I think you received an email from Ronel. So you can just send those slides to her and then we'll share with everyone online, who is online.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yes,
in
okay.
that case, yeah. So if there's anything else to say, probably we can close for the day. Sorry for the participants. I know we are supposed to end at 12, but yeah, sometimes it's exciting. We want to give more information and we want to learn as much as we can within a short period of time. So we'll continue tomorrow exactly at 9 o'clock. And we'll try to end at 12 o'clock as planned. So thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.